Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhetamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. We just touched upon the 20th Sutra last time. So I thought let me just go back to that 20th Sutra to understand much more deeply because there is a trend of there's a change in the trend of these shlokas. Earlier, what we have seen is something about what are the falls, whether it is you are a sannyasi or whether you are a grahastha. Both have their own difficulties, all that he said. And now he comes to the aspect of sadhana, progress aspect of it. So therefore, that these particular shlokas are very important in that sense, and then we look at with that greater depth. Because in this particular culture, that there is so much information about various things that are there for the sadhana, tons of information we have. And the practices, there are innumerable number of practices. We have 30 crore gods that are there. So it looks like this is something like a huge jungle that we are left in. And what is that we are supposed to do? What is the way that we need to go ahead? And there are so many groups who are there, and then they also give various ways. As I said in my first talk, that Adi Shankaracharya tried to make a kind of a core of all these things, the way that he started his journey. He made the Vedas very important. He established the centers for ashrams for the four Vedas, four ashrams. And he also made the ashrams are important, in fact, for the development and preservation and growth of these Vedas, Rigveda, Yajurveda, Samveda, Atharvaveda. Apart from that, he came onto the society also and said that all these temples, all these gods and goddesses, they're important. So therefore, that he created what is called as Dashnam Sampradaya. So they have the leaders to see that how they will lead them, whether it is the forest people or whether it is in the coastal area. So like that, the Sagara Sampradaya, like that, he has given 10 different Sampradaya teachers, created them, gave them the direction, all these things that he has done. And apart from that, he also wrote so many stutis and sutras on gods and goddesses. So it's a very strange thing that I wonder why people called him as only somebody who has established Advaita philosophy. If he were only about Advaita philosophy, then all these things would not have touched, he would not have touched all these things. But the very fact that he has written all these sutras and stutis and everything, including this Bhaja Govindam shlokas that he has written, shows that he has this aspect of Dvaita, that means you surrender to the God, you offer yourself to the God. God is somebody extraordinary. Like that kind of an attitude that he tried to spread in the world outside. If you have somebody, if somebody has become spiritual, then he will understand the importance of these things. Like, for example, Buddha didn't have any God concept. He just only said that meditate and realize yourself. He did not even speak about God. He said, probably he might have thought about this, talking about God is something that is superfluous. So rather than that, guide the man. That's what is the way that he said in various ideas. And that's how the Buddhism started. But then Henry Wales writes that Buddha is a God, no God, but God-like man. So that means to say that he rose himself to that God's level. One can raise to the God's level without even having the name of God with him. So this is the way that Buddha has really looked at himself. Nirvana, it is like the way that the light is gone completely. The fire is gone completely. That's what is the idea of Buddha has taken up. But extraordinary way that he has thought about it. But Shankara did not do that way. Shankara went all the way to praise these gods and they wrote their ideas of God. In spite of the fact that he recognized so many gods, that's how he said he gave what is called as mm, six different sampradayas is to get. So therefore, that Shanmata Vidya that he has started, and where he has written all the praises, not only has written praises, the most important thing he has indicated in all those things is the idea of surrender. Surrender is the main key that he has given. And this Bhaja Govindam shlokas also has very important message to give the idea of surrender aspect of it. That because the most important arrogance somebody can have is the arrogance of knowledge. And in order to see that how you can subdue the arrogance of knowledge, he took up this idea. The person who is supposed to be highly knowledgeable, he calls it as Mudha. So Mudha Mate, when he says that, he is not addressing an ordinary person, a dumb fellow. He is addressing somebody who is really highly erudite scholar that he is addressing. Otherwise, what happens is that it becomes very trip. So this is where Shankara's approach has been more to see that how this aspect of surrender is brought about. So, and Ramakrishna Paramahansa used to say very beautifully that a tree which has large number of fruits, you see that the tree bends down. And he gave that analogy to explain about somebody who has large amount of knowledge is the one who becomes humble. So this humility that Shankara wanted us to recognize that aspect of it. And so in this direction, when he is going to see that how we can develop that, he says now the idea of this Bhagavad Gita Kinchita Tita, Ganga Jalalava Kadika Pita, Sakrita Piyena Murari Samarcha, Kriyate Tasya Yamena Nachacha, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Mudhamate. The concept of Yama talks about you. All these things are Quranic way of expression. If he were to be a strict Advaitin principle person, he would not have talked about all these things. But the very fact that he recognizes every other path of spirituality in that direction, that's why he talks about that. Now, Bhagavad Gita, Kinchita Gita, that is even a small little drop that you take it, that's good enough, he says. But then there are people who have memorized Gita, who talks on Gita, who have written treatises on Gita, did a lot of research work and papers are published and all those things. But what happened to them with all those things? And the books, like the way that they sit in the library, in his brain also, they sit like in library. It does not come to their use. And the more and more that you have all those things, very knowledge becomes like a burden. So let it not become like a burden. And what happens is that this knowledge can become such an arrogance that if somebody does not have the knowledge, then you start really condemning it. You start looking down upon. I remember very well when once very young, I was a student. I had not. Basically, I grew up in Telangana area, which was supposed to be Muslim area. There was not even a trust about the local language, forget about Sanskrit and other things. And I was interested in learning these things and knowing about this, but then there were no opportunities in my school days. Then later on, I came to one Swamiji and I asked him that, can you please guide me in the meditation and spirituality? He said, what do you know about Sanskrit? I said, I don't know anything. So have you read Bhagavad Gita? I said, I did not read Bhagavad Gita. Upanishad, Vedas? I said, no, nothing. Why? Because I don't know Sanskrit. Oh, you don't even know Sanskrit? And you didn't read all these things? No. Gita you didn't read? Then why do you come to me and waste your time and my time? If I had known all those things, I wouldn't have come to you. But then I thought about it. But then that was a condemnation for me. But in spite of the fact, all that you said, that one point in those young days, 16-year-old person, that really inspired me. What he said is that there must be something extraordinary in Bhagavad Gita that he talked about. So straight away, I went to the bookshop and bought the book of Bhagavad Gita. that, take it home. Today, when I look back at all those things, yeah, what he said is that Gita was something which inspired me. All the other things later on, I see that he actually condemned me, but it didn't matter. I could just put it aside. What is useful for me, I picked it up and then went back. So, Gita is something which is such an extraordinary text. Length and breadth of this country, outside this country, everybody recognizes that. And then people have done so much of research in that, published papers. But then he says that what do you mean by Kinchidadrita? That means to say it is not the question of the whole of Bhagavad Gita or all that. Even a bit is good enough. Even a small little piece is good enough. What do you mean by small little piece is good enough? Actually, whatever that we read, whatever that we understand about it, it goes into the head. It doesn't go to the heart. It becomes our intelligence, but it does not become our experience. There's a big difference between something that becomes like an experience and something which becomes like a intelligence which stays at that level. It's like the way again the books that are there in the library. So have the books in the library does not make any sense to me unless until that I have really brought about in my day-to-day life. This is what Patanjali also gives us the idea. And it's about when he talked about Yama Niyama, he said Ahimsa, Satyasteya, Brahmacharya, Vigraha, and all those things. He says that when he talks about Ahimsa, he says Ahimsayam Pratisthayam Tatsamita. The Pratishtha is something which is very important. That means to say we are established in the Ahimsa. This is something which is extraordinary. Can that be the way that Ahimsa can enter into us? Satya can enter into us. It's not that why we need to look at that particular thing is that we are so much habituated in doing. We are so much trained in wanting to be doing. So you give me something that I do it. But then being aspect is something which is very important. Even the truth, even the ahimsa, non-violence, is something that you practice. Like the way it is so easy to practice yama, it's so easy to practice asana, pranayama, 1 hour asana, 1 hour pranayama, that we do it. It's so easy. Many people take to yoga in that way, but very less people, very few people really look at this particular yama. In fact, on the other hand, they say that yes, we read it, we understood that there are some like yama. That's good enough. Why we have to go again and again on that? Why we have to think about it? But it has to become our way of life. There are people whose life has become ahimsa, whose life has become satya. And this is something which is very important. That's why we have such examples where the truth is not just practiced, the truth is being lived. It's so easy to practice the truth. And particularly people say, can I practice 1 hour, like 1 hour asana that you do? 1 hour I practice ahimsa, 1 hour I practice satya. It's not that 1 hour, you have to become that. It's not like 1 hour like asanas that you do. You become that. That's why becoming is something which is very important. So whatever that ahimsa, satya, whatever Patanjali has given us, the same ideas, same way, the ideas of Bhagavad Gita are also given. These are also various ideas that you have to live, you have to experience. When Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, that look, Nainam Chindanti Shastrani, Nainam Dahati Pavakaha. That means to say, Shastras do not kill you. And the wind cannot dry you up. When he says like that, do we have that experience? Can you really feel that? Is it just only the words, or can it be translated into experience or reality? So this is something which is very, very important. So therefore, and how important it should become is that if that particular one sentence, one shloka that Krishna has given in the second chapter, Nainam Chindante Shastrani, Nainam Dhatipa, and then Atma is something which cannot be touched by these things. After that, actually, Gita is not necessary for us because we are established in that state. And there are people who, by just hearing that, they are established in that. That's what is the way that Shuka is described about. In fact, he was never into all this Vedanta philosophy or anything. But his father, Vyasa, was writing all those things, and then he was like a young man wandering around, loitering around. One day, dad called him and Shuka said, "What is this? You're wasting your time. Come on, pay attention on these things, what I'm doing." Then Shuka asked dad, "Okay, dad, what is that you are doing?" See, look at all these things. You never knew about it, and I'm describing about that. You are not this body, you are Atma. Somebody who is living in this body. That one sentence that dad said, immediately probably a couple of other questions that come up. What about my name, fame, this my name, my this thing, parents and all that? They said, none of these things are there. You are the Nitya Buddha, Brahman, in the form of Atmasthiti. None of these things are reality. These are all the things which are aropita, that means that is um, mounted on you. Oh, is that so? So this is all about like the way that in the dream. So I come out of the dream, that means none of these things exist. Yes, come on, realize the truth, recognize the truth. Come on, read these books. Dad was saying all those things, but the son was already there. He has no more dad, he has no more anything, no more body. He doesn't have any body, he doesn't have anything connected with this body, gender, etc., etc. He is free from all that. He becomes one with the consciousness. And then he was going. When he was going, dad calls him back saying that, hey, come on, where are you going? My dear son, where are you going? Where is the son? Son is not there anymore. He is just walking. It has already become his experience. And while walking, dad was behind him, and the son was going, and then dad from behind is calling, oh, my dear son, where are you going? Shouting at him. But then son, it doesn't enter his ear. And then there is a point where all these gopikas are there, those days they were taking part in the play in that particular pond. And then Shuka walks across, and then these people continue to give ladies continue to play. But then when Yasha comes, they all hide inside the water, saving their modesty. Yasa was shocked. He said, my young son, 20-year-old man, when he went, you did not think of it. Whereas, woman, you heard me, you heard yourself, you are hiding himself in the water. What happened to you? Then they said that he was like a child and he was walking. We don't see any son, any dad, or anything. It's beyond all those things. It's a pure Atman which is going. Whereas the very fact that you are shouting, my dear son, shows that you still belong to this world. That's why we feel the modesty. So therefore, this is one particular person who just lived that hearing once. This is what Krishna says, Shankara says in this particular thing. Gita said 700 shlokas are there, but you take any one concept, make it as your being. It's not a question of any knowledge, but it's a question of being. That itself is good enough. And this Bhagavad Gita, it does not mean only Gita itself, but it is something like anything in that sense, whatever that is supposed to be about the God words that is there, and that God word is Bhagavat. And then Gita. Gita that does not come from outside. Gita comes from within. Words belong to the world outside. The poetry, the music that belongs to you from within. And that melody, that shaking of the head, that enjoying the whole thing has to come from within. And when it comes from within, or that even the child is mellowed down, even the serpent is mellowed down. That's why they say that Shishurveti, Masurveti, all these things that there is into this particular Gita, that say from within. And if one can read, one can understand this particular Gita, then he understands so many things about the world outside. In fact, there are people who know, listen to the birds when they are chirping, when they are making noise and all that. They can understand so many things from those words, from those sounds that they are producing. That's what is Gita. That means you become one with those birds, one with those creatures that are there. How beautiful it is that you become one with them. So this is what is basically this Kinchita Gita, Bhagavad Gita, Kinchita Gita. Kinchit means just that little bit that becomes like your soul. We have such beautiful examples to show that one word, it becomes like your soul. In Mahabharata, that beautiful example comes where all the boys went for training under Drona. And Drona, he gave the first lesson, and then all of the people that all the students that they have learned that and then memorized all that, they're prepared for the second lesson. But Yudhishthira, he was still stuck in the first lesson. And Drona says, why don't you proceed further? Second, no, I'm still in the first one. Once I understand that, once I know full purport of that, then only I can go to the second one. He thought that Yudhishthira is supposed to be the most intelligent person. But then he is still stuck. The others are walking ahead. So he was feeling it very strange. But in spite of it, that he took such a long time. And that first one is about the Satya, about the truth. And then Yudhishthira was stuck there. And Yudhishthira then even Drona felt, yes, really what's supposed to be followed in the world is this particular truth. If we can really follow the truth, honestly follow the truth, and there is nothing but truth alone, then there is a question of second word in the world. The world comes to an end with you. What an extraordinary, wonderful statement that is there. So that's why Patanjali has said Ahimsayam Pratishtha. And Yudhishthira waiting for Pratishtha in the case of Satya Pratishtha, in the truth that he wanted to be the Pratishtha. Then, actually, when he understood that, Drona realized how great Yudhishthira is. And Yudhishthira cannot take it so easily. He has to be convinced about it. He has to be involved in that. He has to be soaked in that. He had a great admiration for Yudhishthira because Satya is supposed to be his life here and beyond. And that is what is very important in Satya. When it becomes your life, it's beyond the time. So therefore, that Yudhishthira is associated with that particular word called as Satya so strongly, so imprinted in the mind of Drona. That's one of the reasons where in Mahabharata war, when Yudhishthira says something, then 100% Drona believes that. He does not believe in anybody else's words, but Yudhishthira's words. Because the simple thing that he knows that Yudhishthira is somebody who is absolutely, totally immersed in that particular truth. Truth and Yudhishthira cannot be separated. Such great person that he is. That's why in the battlefield, when they made him to say Ashwatthama, and then they actually kept an elephant in the name of Ashwatthama. Ashwatthama is supposed to be the name of the son of Drona. And until this Drona dies, there is no way that Pandavas can go proceed in the warfield. And this is what Krishna's trick. Krishna kept a elephant, huge elephant, and who's playing a wreck in the battlefield. And everybody is concerned about that elephant who is playing wreck by name Ashwatthama. And then he killed that Ashwatthama. And Bhima then shouted saying that Ashwatthama died. And that was repeated by Yudhishthira saying that Ashwatthama died. Yudhishthira meant Ashwatthama is that elephant which was creating a menace that died. And then he corrected himself saying that Ashwatthama Kunjaraha, that means to say it is the elephant. But meanwhile, there is so much of noise in that particular celebration, noise of that celebration that is going on there in the battlefield, that Kunjara word has not entered into Drona. Drona, all that what he saw was that Yudhishthira said that Ashwatthama. He thought that his son is dead because it came from Yudhishthira. If it had come from anywhere else, he would not have believed it. But it came, or he would have continued to verify, he would have asked some few questions to verify and all those things. But there was no chance for that because it came from Yudhishthira that he thought Yudhishthira meant that. And that was the beautiful trick that Krishna played. And then he has given up his astras at that point of time. That is when Yudhishthira, he has cut his Arjuna cut the head, and he did not allow that particular head to fall anywhere else. It has to fall in the hands of another Satan. So all the story continues. But then this particular idea is, it is not the question of that word Satya that he heard about it. He knew about various things, but more importantly, established that. This is what the idea of Kinchitadhita, that means even a bit of it becomes your experience. It is like the way that you take the taste of the water in the ocean from anywhere. It's always the same taste, and that's what is salvation. So any one particular truth that you take from this Bhagavat words, the God's words, and then make it as your own, and then your soul sings that word, that's what is Bhagavad Gita. Your soul is singing the word of God. That is Bhagavad Gita. When it sings like that, that's what is the idea of Bhagavad Gita. Even here also in Mahabharata, Bhagavad Gita also, look at the way when Arjuna talks about it, Arjuna Vacha. Dhritarashtra talked about it, Dhritarashtra Vacha. But when Krishna talks about something, he does not say Sri Krishna Vacha, but he says Sri Bhagavan Vacha. That means Krishna is not there. Only Bhagavan is coming from within. Then it becomes Bhagavad Gita. When it comes from the heart of Krishna in the form of Bhagavad Gita, it can come from heart of any one of us, where the I is not there, dissolved completely, and the truth comes in its own full pristine Bhagavad Gita. It may be a small little thing. It may not be in the form of words, it may be in the form of silence. Because many saints are known by the way that their very silence influenced. And one such great saint is Ramana Maharshi. He was sitting most of the time silent, but then people used to feel the benefit of silence. It's not the words, it's the silence which communicated. That's what is the idea of Bhagavad Gita, Kinchitadhita. It is a small little expression that comes in the form of whatever the impression of the divinity that's there within, that transforms the world. Kinchitadhita. Ganga Jalalava Kanika. This concept of, first of all, water itself is something which purifies everything. Anything that you want to clean it, anything that you want to make it clear, and you use the water. Water is the ultimate cleaner. So therefore, it purifies the whole thing. And that too, Ganga is supposed to be that kind of a river which can purify everything. Not only purify the physical aspect of it, but can purify the spiritual aspect of it. That's the reason why every other river cleanses your body. But then Ganga, if you take a dip in that, it cleanses your soul also. That's why we go to it. The whole story is built on that. Look at the way that how Ganga has come onto the earth. It was no other river has come in such a way that Ganga has come Puranically from the point of view of our whole philosophy. And that is when somebody was doing meditation, not for himself, but to see that how it can really help the good in the society. For that he was meditating. And finally he requested Ganga to come down. And then Ganga says from the heaven has to come. He says that this earth cannot take it. Because you know that from the earth, when you look at heaven is small, but then from the heaven, earth is a very tiny, small little thing. And this tiny, small little earth, on top of it, who are you? Who is this particular thing? It's nothing. So therefore, if I come there, it is something that can really create a havoc. It can drain the whole thing. It can simply wash away the whole thing. Therefore, that you need to have somebody who is purity, is going to arrest this whole thing. That's why Shiva is supposed to be Mangala. In his matted hair, he arrests Ganga and then releases this Ganga slowly. And that's how basically it goes through all these ashrams where takes the six the blessings of all these saints, Mandakini and Bhagirathi and all those things, and then finally comes this Punya Kshetras, and then further it goes. What is the importance of it? It's not just water. Chemical analysis of water may be the same as chemical analysis of any other water. Many times people look at that particular aspect. They get a bottle of water from the Ganga and they say that okay, it does not get spoiled, it always stays. That may be real reason, that may be fine. But that's only physical reality about that. But Ganga is something which is much more deeper than that. This is something which can purify not only the body, mind, and right up to the consciousness. It purifies so that we are one with the consciousness. That's why all the sages are around the path of Ganga. And Ganga is something, Ganga Jalalava, Kanika Pita. Pita means that water, that purity, that is flowing from the divinity. And you have the thirst of it, then only you drank it. The thirst you have drank, you took it inside you to quench your thirst. And what kind of thirst this Ganga river can quench you? It's not only the physical thirst, but it's something which is much more deeper. At the spiritual level, the thirst that is there, it can bliss them. That's why Kanika Pita, even a small little dose of it that you take it, is something which is very important. But it is not the question of how much water that you take or how much that you take. But what is very important thing is that the feeling with which that you take, this one drop of water that's entering into me is essentially trying to fill me of all the impurities that are there within. I can wash off all the sins, everything that is there. For that we go. That's why people go to Ganga to wash off their sins. And somebody asked Ramakrishna that is that Ganga water pure so that it can remove the sin? Yes, Ganga water is so pure that sins cannot survive in Ganga water. But then what happens? When you go to the Ganga, you leave your clothes outside on the deck or maybe on the tree and then go to take bath and then come back. Where you left the cloth, all the sins are also there in the cloth. And then you go and take a dip and come back. The moment you put on the cloth, the sins also won't come to you. So unless until you put the sins along with yourself into the water, then it cannot reborn for you. It's a new birth for you. But then we don't do that. Not only that, people who go to Ganga, all the place, they say Ganga gives them a license to see that fresh sins can be started. When this way that we have an attitude, what is that Ganga can do? It is like this, that you do not surrender yourself. Surrender means whatever that is bad, whatever that is negative, whatever that you are egoistic about it, you leave it there. If you don't do that, it's not going to cleanse you. In fact, it is like the way that you go to the water, you are thirsty, you go to the water and stand there. You don't bend down to pick up the water and drink. If you don't do that, water cannot take care of your thirst. You have to bend down. That bending down the water in the Ganga is like the way that out of humility you bend down. So much you bend down, you dip into the Ganga itself completely. And then you come out and take a new breath. Until that time, whatever that's going on, just stop that and then emptying into the water and then come with the new breath. This is what we are trying to do. And that's very important to see that Kanika people go to the Ganga, but then they think that it is the fresh lease that they got, license they got to do the since again. Sakruta Piyena Murari Samartha. This Murari, of all the names he has taken, the Mura, there is the demon and then who kills. And then here the Mura is not the question of any Mura from outside, but all the evil that is there, born out of your ego, negativities that are there, all those things you have killed. Only one thing that can kill is that divinity that is there. Krishna gives in Bhagavad Gita, Daivi Sampat, Asuri Sampat. That Asuri Sampat, what can be removed by the Asuri Sampat is this Daivi Sampat, the divine qualities that are there. Murare Samarcha and Shakrutapiyena Murare Samarcha. And at least once that you have taken this name, the Vishnu's name, Murari's name, Krishna's name. Idea is that we take so many times this name, hundreds of times. In fact, people write Rama's name in the book and then they keep account of it. They have written something like 1 lakh times and 1 million times and all that. As if God is interested in the number. It's not in the number that He's interested. The number, it's not that number belongs to the intellect. If you write once, and not that you are writing in the book or writing on the paper, but when you are writing on the paper, actually, you are writing, inscribing it in your heart. That one time that you inscribe in your heart, and that is something which is constantly ringing within you. That one time that you do it, that's something which is very, very effective, important. In fact, many times when you are writing, many times you are doing, it looks like that you are not sure of yourself. That taking his name, he is going to be happy with that, unless until you bore him with his own name number of times, then he says out of boredom, says, okay, all right, I will take care of you. You want to do that. Because that's what is the world that we want. If you want to please somebody, you go to him to the level of boring, and he says, all right, get rid of you. Then he will come. So God will not come to you because they are boring. It is not that way it works. Sakruta piyena murari samarcha, krete tasya yamena nachacha. This expression of tasya yamena nachacha kriyate is very, very beautiful expression. It's an extraordinary, wonderful expression. One expression is that Yama cannot touch you. Yama can touch only something where all the sins are there, and that's one. But then people are saints also die, sinners also die, everybody dies. But he says, Yamena na chacha, Yama will not do the chacha of you. Yama has to do some chacha, that there should be something or the other which is supposed to be wrong about you. If there is everything is good, everything is nice, what is that he has to do the chacha? Mullah says he went to the heaven, and there was this Peter sitting there. He said, why did you come to heaven? You have to go to the heaven. He said, no, I did something good. Come on, check your records. Poor fellow has become old, for such a long time he's been working. So he thought that he might have missed. He checked and checked and checked the whole list. Everywhere it shows that he did this thing wrong, that wrong, this wrong. And wherever the reference of good comes, it only says that he wanted to do good, but he did not do good. Something or the other happened, so therefore that he missed from doing there. Good. So everywhere it is like that. So he says that, Mullah, I've seen many times that you wanted to do good, not really wanted to do good because you really wanted to do good. But then everywhere the record shows that you want to do good so that people should think that you are doing good work. It's for sake of others you are doing it. Even that also you missed it. So many times your intention was to do good. Not for sake of doing good, but to impress upon others that you are also doing good. But then even that also you failed. So I don't see anywhere that something good about you and you came to heaven. So you tell me, whatever that you tell, that I accept it, and then I will send you to heaven. Then Mullah said, one day I gave 1 rupee to somebody as a charity. Immediately St. Peter took out 1 rupee from his pocket and gave it back and said, now you can go to hell. I'll return back that 1 rupee to you and then go to hell. So even that also something what is supposed to be. That's supposed to be the way that it is. The Yama. Na chacha, he will not do the chacha. If there is no something bad about you, all the good that is there, Yama has not interference, but only the gods will interfere. Gods will come to receive you. Gods will take care of you. This is one aspect of it. That's why we say that when somebody like Buddha died, there were saints waiting with flowers to receive him. So you should be somebody who's a saint to receive and not the Yama to receive you. That's the kind of character that you should have. Yamena na chacha. The others will chacha, do the chacha for you. Yes, you have somebody joining us in that way. But then there is another very important aspect of it. much more deeper aspect, in my view. Yamenana Chacha, that means to say actually, what is this Chacha? That means that you are constantly in the fear of death. Yama gives us the fear of death. So that fear of death is there within. It looks like that one day a little bird, he had a dream about Yama, and then he got up shivering that Yama is going to take him, and therefore he was shivering. So he went to the leader of the bird, Garuda, supposed to be the leader of the big fellow. And hey, Garuda, you are Yama's good friend. Last night I saw in my dream, Yama came to me and then he's going to take me. Oh, don't worry, I'm here. I'll take care of you. Be with me. Whole day be with me so that Yama will not be able to touch you. So he went to Yama's place, and Yama has not yet come, and both this bird and Garuda were waiting there. And when Yama enters into all the other gods and everybody gets up to receive Yama. When the Magadas, that means people were praising and all those things, and then Yama is walking and receiving the greetings from everybody and holding with the hands and then offering his greetings to him. Suddenly he looks at Garuda, and Garuda is also here, so naturally he has respect for Garuda. Then he saw the little bird. Oh, you're also here. He offered his respect. But then the way that he looked at that bird also noticed, Garuda also noticed. And then, but Yama walked ahead. This little bird said to Yama, just like Garuda saying that, look, the way that Garuda looked at me, Yama looked at me with suspicion. That's what I told you, no? Yes, I am. So you need to say, because you seem to have a eye for me. But then Yama walked ahead and then went and sat down on the throne. During that time, that means he left Garuda and then went to the throne. Garuda said, okay, I will play a nice, wonderful trick for you. And then he, in one twice of a second, like a lightning, he takes him beyond 5, 7 rivers and 7 hills and all that, puts him in a cave, and said, be safe in this cave right now. I'll come later on to talk to you. And then he went back and stood at Yama's darbar like the way that he was standing. Now, after Yama sat down, he gestured everybody to sit down. Then he looked at Garuda. And then this bird was missing. Huh? Again, with a surprised look, he looked at, and then Garuda sat down. But then Yama smiled. Garuda came to him and said, you know, what is this? You looked at very suspiciously while walking, and now once again you look at me and then you smile. He said, yeah, you know, this morning at the breakfast table, I was just going through all that list. Don't care for whose list is there because there are so many things that are getting eliminated every day. It's a routine thing. So therefore, I don't really interfere with all those things. But then today, breakfast table, I was just turning the pages. My attention went to this little bird. And then I said, yes, this is also one of the birds which will die today. I counted on that, but that stayed in my memory. I came here and suddenly saw this bird here. Oh, I saw the breakfast table and the whole this record, and then but here also I see the same bird. Oh. And then I went ahead and then sat down. I turned around, everybody is there, but then this bird is missing. Now my curiosity grew. So what happened to this? Until now, I never even thought about this bird so deeply. But now, with my special vision, I saw that you took this bird exactly the place where he's supposed to die, and you put him in that cave. Nice thing that you have done. Yemen and a chacha, that you say you just cannot escape your master. Thanks. Whenever that happens, Yemen and a chacha. So that it will be always following you. Which moment, which time, what's your support, what's your security? Yama does not care for that, does not protect that. That's what is the greatness of Yama. He has absolutely, what you say is non-partitional, is just very pure and clear and clean. Actually, what he does is something like purifying you, clearing you. That's why we have such a great idea about Yama is supposed to be a god. Nowhere else in the world does concept of Yama to be a god, but we have a death god to be a god. But we have the concept of God. But on the other hand, what happens is that you can create the dream of Yama all the time around you and then shiver, fear. However great you may be, but you can create that kind of a thing around you. I was thinking in this particular context, I was remembering the great Russian king, Russian emperor called as Stalin. You know, the very name Stalin came to be like a steel man. That's why he's supposed to be Stalin. You can see his picture, how strong he is, how great he is, and all those things. But with all those things, his life was every moment was a moment of saving himself from the death. Death can come from in any direction, any direction. In fact, he always used to have at least about 6 or 7 impersonations, so that wherever Stalin used to be there, Stalin himself was not there, somebody else used to be there. Because if something happens, it can happen to that person, it will not happen to him. This was constantly there going on, day in and day out. He could not believe in anybody around him because anybody might kill him. So that means to say death was hanging on his head all the time. So much that it was hanging on his head. In biography, where Nikita Khrushchev has written, he was supposed to be his secretary, his assistant. Later on, he became the chief of Russian Federation. And then he wrote in his biography about his experience with Stalin. He said that every moment used to be fear for me because one thing is that he was not believing in anybody else. So therefore, he didn't have any cook or anything like that. His daughter Svetlana used to come and cook food for him and then serve him. And then even though his daughter Svetlana would come and serve the food, Stalin used to sit down and make Khrushchev to eat first. So Khrushchev used to eat the food. And then he would wait for an hour or 2 hours. If the stomach is not upset, if something poisonous was not there in that, then he would eat it. Just imagine that he could not take the food from his own daughter's hand. What messed with the life? That means constantly there was death looming on him all the time. This is what is Yama doing the Chacha viewers. In so many ever different ways that he is doing the Chacha viewers. Because he created so many enemies. You killed so many people. In fact, that was the record. That Stalin himself killed so many people that the fear of death was constantly in his psychology. Constantly in his psychology. In fact, the same thing happened to the pilot who put the bomb in the Hiroshima and Nagasaki. You know, in the plane when he was traveling and the bomb was there, he was given instructions to go there. And then exactly at this particular place, he released the bomb. He released it. Bomb went and destroyed the whole Hiroshima. And he did not, at that time, he doesn't know it because he's there on the plane and the plane went back to the place there, island. And then there, newspapers, a news came up on the radio that so many people died. Millions of people died in Hiroshima and Nagasaki by the bombing. The moment he heard that, this bomb killed so many people at once, it really played commerce in him. So bad that he became a mental wreck later on. He could not survive himself. See, that means to say how much a death that you cause can cause death on you, and then you stuck in that. And that same thing happened to even Stalin also, that he was constantly in the fight of the figure of and the feeling of the death within himself. So this is what is Yama, churches of that. In fact, somebody asked Peso that you said that Stalin was so authoritarian, so strong, and why did you not ask any question? Why could you not ask any question when Stalin was there? Khrushchev said, that's the difference between me and what's the difference between you and Stalin? He said, that's the difference between me and Stalin. He said, you could not ask any question to Stalin. You could ask me that question and survive. People could not survive when they can answer when they ask any question against Stalin. So many people. So therefore, that death was looming on him. At 74 years that he died, constantly shivering with the fear. Every moment, every cell was filled with that fear. That means to say, Yama was constantly on him. So that's what it says that Kriyate Tasya Yamena Nachacha Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Govindam Bhaja Mudhamate. It is you create that atmosphere where Yama discusses about you, does a chacha about you. Or the question is that the death becomes much more important. In fact, what happens is that the death is there always to everybody, everybody goes to the death. But then the timid dies number of times. A hero, a valor, dies only once. That's the difference. And valor is somebody who is honest, sincere, that he has not done anything wrong. Therefore, he doesn't have anything to be afraid of. That's one aspect of it. The second aspect of it is that the very fact that you see all around you that death is happening. In any species that is there, like for example, flowers are there in the morning, night they are gone. The insects that are born in the morning, night that they will not be there. So this is something which is constantly going on in the nature. But somehow what happens is that we have a strange feeling that we don't die. We don't receive the message that the death is there for us also. So therefore, we keep that fear of death hiding behind somewhere deep inside. We don't even express. And what is the way that we try to avoid that is, when the moment somebody dies, we are ready to give a condolence message to that person, so sorry that you died. What is that, so sorry that you died? Actually, that message is that you also will die. But then we still think that we will survive. I've seen that the cancer ward where cancer patients are there, number that means to say they are 2 weeks after 2 weeks that they are going to die. But then somebody else died, said, Bechara mar gaya, poor fellow died. Hey, what about you? Is it not a message for you that you will also die one day? Everybody that comes to the church is bringing a message to you that you will also go. We all go to graveyard to send the people out. But we will not go ourselves to graveyard. Somebody else has to bring us. That shows that graveyard is something that somebody has to do with us. But whether you go to the graveyard or anywhere that you are lost, how does it matter when you are not there in this body? But then what happens with us is we identify so much with the body, we identify so much with the objective world that is there also. But all these things mean because there is something which is not dying behind it. So this death can happen to something which is coming and going. Death cannot happen to us. We are free from that. But this aspect, we don't realize that. If only we can realize, then nothing can really stop us. That's what in the next sutra he brings about, 21st sutra. Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, punarapi janani jakare shayanam. Iha samsare, bahudusthare, krupaya param, pahi marare. Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Govindam, Bhaja Mudhamate. Iha samsare, bahudusthare. It seems full of pain, full of suffering. What is that? Shankara is giving this idea that this life is something full of misery, full of pain. But what about the positive things that are there in this world? Celebration that is there, greatest that is there in this world. We do all those things, but ultimately that we succumb to the suffering, we succumb to the sickness, and then the death comes upon. That's something which is much more pronounced than all those things. And the birth and death, this is what is the cycle. The moment that you are born, actually death is already written there. What is born will have to die. So it seems like the journey is between the birth and death. That's what is going on. Often we say that life and death issue, life and death connection. But actually life and death are not connected. Birth and death are connected. What is born has to die. Life is independent of these two things. But often we say that life and death situation. It's not actually life and death situation. It is a birth and death situation. What is born has to die. You see that insects will die. Even a soap bubble will die. Born, it will die. So this is what is the truth, reality of the nature outside. What is born has to die. But then, are you supposed to be the one who is born? Because you identify with something which is born. That's why you feel that the death comes. Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, punarapi janani chakare shayana. That means once again that you are born in the mother's womb and the whole journey starts. Why he talks about mother's womb? That means you are always in the mother's womb. You are always there in the mother's womb, ready to take birth, ready to come outside. What is meant by mother's womb? Mother's womb is a place where absolutely there is no freedom for you. From that, the freedom evolves. The child will not be breathing in the mother's womb. In the beginning, that is like a small little one cell, and from there, movement of hands and legs and all those things, and as it grows, moment he comes outside, then he independently breathes. Until the time he's not even breathing independently beating his heart. So all these things look like a journey to go towards that freedom. One after the other, this freedom sets in, and we enjoy that freedom. Particularly when the child gets up and starts walking, then the walking is the degree of freedom. The child, that's the reason why child enjoys that freedom, walks, mother runs behind him. And then now mother says, look, I can't even hold you. You are so naughty, you are so dangerous, you can go anywhere. He'll be waiting for that moment that when he can escape from the mother's clutches. He doesn't realize that what is the problem that is there. One day he realizes that all these things, freedom that he has, is actually becomes a problem for him. Everything looks like a problem there. Then he realizes, you don't realize now when you are grown up that you enjoyed walking, you enjoyed running around. Mother's whips that you could get rid of and walk. And then you were sitting and then start getting up and then walking. Even there you felt a couple of times that you walked. You don't remember. When you are first driving the bicycle that you fell down a couple of times, you don't remember that. At that time when we are doing it, all that looks like positive that we are doing. And then later on when you go, you see that these are the same things that are being used. They are the things that are using you. You are being used by these things. Your own knowledge are being used. Your own facilities are being used. Your own body uses you. The body says this is right for you, this is not right for you. You don't want that, but then body uses you. So this is how essentially that you are being used by this physical body outside. Therefore, one day you start becoming hatred towards this body. Oh my God, this body is so powerful. Let me just leave it. Let me just, unless until you leave it, the body will not leave. It still holds on to you. That's why I say the last breath also. Now you can't take any more, and therefore that you leave it. That's a freedom that you get. But until that time, Bahudusthar, it is basically this so trouble, so difficult, so hard. Then it looks like that every moment that you live is like a struggle, is a fight. Many people, what happens is right from the beginning that they look this as struggle and fight. In fact, that's what the Western concept is, that life is a constant series of struggle. At least we don't have that. We have idea of festivity, idea of celebration. Whereas in the modern science, it's not like that. It's constant fight. Examination is a fight, and passing that is going to the office is a fight. Why all these things even? Getting up in the morning is a fight. Breakfast is a fight. Everything seems to be a fight. We are fighting against what? Fighting the death. That has become like the way that they're holding. That's the reason why it is called as stress. We are in that rat race. What is this rat race? There's only one race that's going on. The race is towards the death. Everybody is reaching that death. That's what is going on. But then we give every other rat race that we include in this particular thing. There's a very beautiful idea. What is this idea of rat race? Somebody said, what is wrong about it? I'm in the rat race. The world is in the rat race, I'm in the rat race. Isn't that look? The problem with the rat race is that even if you win, you are still a rat. You can't even become a cat. You still remain as a rat. Nothing really happens. There's no vertical growth. There's only horizontal that happens. Schumacher said very nicely, saying that it's like the way that a goat is tied to a longer rope. A shorter rope it grays in that circle, which is the radius of this small little rope. But if it's a longer rope, then it graze in a bigger land. But then what is the ultimate? It's only grazing the grass, nothing beyond that. So all the technology development, all the development we think, all the innovation that we do, it is nothing but that the rope is longer. There's no vertical growth. That's what is the idea. It says that punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, punarapi. It's like a cyclical way that it is going on. Like a rat going through the cycle. I've seen one very nice picture that was there, video clipping that was there, where there is this wheel and the rat is running in that wheel. Because the rat is running, wheel is turning. And the rat is there, just only at that level, but only the wheel is turning. That's what is the rat race. Where you are there, wherever you are. Looks like that you are running. And that you are putting a lot of effort. All effort is like that we are putting is to see that we are showing that as we are. I always wonder. My father was much better than I am. My grandfather was much better than I am. His son. When you look back at that level, they didn't have much, but then they were happier. They didn't have all this running around. Whereas we are caught up in this run. That's why punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, punarapi janani, yes, samsare, bahudusthare. Then what happens? The last sentence is something which is very important. He says that Krupaya pari pahi murari. This is where that you surrender. Offer yourself. What is that? All this running around that goes on is what is called as Leela. Leela is very beautiful word. So it's like a play. In play, what happens is that whether you are this character, that character, you are this way or that way, it doesn't matter. You just play, make the play go on. In one play that you are Ravan, the other play that you are Ram, that play that you are Lakshman. How does it matter? And then play that role, finish that role, see that everybody is happy with that, be done with that. If you don't identify yourself with that role that you play, if you free yourself from that, then this world is a wonderful place to live. Krupaya pari, pahi murari. That's what is this murari. Murari is there only when there are, Mura is there, then murari is there. When there are evils that are there, then you fight, you conquer over them. But for you, that you have conquered all those things from within, there is nothing that you are attached to. There's nothing you are holding on to it. You are free from yourself. When you have that all these things, they are just like the way that the play. Mother's womb also is like a play. Running in this world is like a play. That's what in Ramayana, Rama's mother, when Rama comes back from the whole of Aranyavasa and all that settles down in Ayodhya, one day Kausalya comes to him and says that Rama, all these things that you have done, people praise you, that you are God. They say that you are some extraordinary God and this and that. Are you really God? Mother is asking that question. Rama smiles and says, how does it matter to you? What a simple thing is that you are my mother, I am your child. That's all. And you have given me birth. What more important than that? For me, that's the highest. The same mother's womb, Jakare Shayanam. There I started my journey. It's something which is like a blessing. If you do something which is unattached way, good in this world, we give out of joy, out of satisfaction, then our life also is not in the bondage, it has the freedom. then that becomes like a heaven through that you have come up. Kripaya Pari, Pahiruma. When you recognize this aspect of yours, this positive aspect, the giving aspect of it, and this play, the idea of art is a play in this world that you have. Further, actually, sutras will strengthen that idea. That's what is basically when you recognize that. That's what is Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam. It's not in singing, it is in the way that you feel within yourself that your whole life is nothing but a journey in that direction. Let's try to make that journey as a Bhaja Govindam. Let's work in that way. Very happy. I'll stop it here. We'll continue the sutras next time. And Hari Om Tat Sat. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.